I should have seen it coming. All the signs were flashing right in front of my face. But that's the thing about betrayal, isn't it? You never suspect the people closest to you. My husband Derek had been acting strange for months, treating me like I was invisible. And when I finally gave in to my suspicions, I found messages to someone called Jay. What I discovered next? It wasn't just any affair. When I reserved a table right next to theirs at that fancy restaurant he'd never taken me to, I was ready for confrontation. But I wasn't ready for the truth. Because sitting across from my husband, laughing and celebrating like they owned the world, was someone I never imagined in a million years. And what I did next? Let's just say I made sure everyone knew exactly who they were dealing with. I should have seen it coming, honestly. Looking back now, all the signs were there, flashing like neon lights in front of my face. But you know how it is when you love someone. You make excuses. You rationalize. You convince yourself that everything's fine even when your gut is screaming that it's not. My husband, Derek, had been acting weird for months. And I don't mean just a little off, I mean completely different. The man who used to kiss me goodbye every morning like his life depended on it, suddenly couldn't even look me in the eye. He'd come home late, phone glued to his hand, and when I'd ask about his day, he'd give me these one-word answers like I was some annoying telemarketer, interrupting his dinner. At first, I blamed work. Derek's a financial consultant downtown, and tax season can be brutal. But then tax season ended, and nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. He started picking fights over nothing. I'd ask him to take out the trash, and suddenly we're in World War III about how I never appreciate anything he does, which was rich, considering I could barely remember the last time he'd done anything around the house besides leave his dirty socks on the, bedroom floor. The worst part? The way he looked at me changed. You know that look your partner gives you that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room? Yeah, that was gone. Completely vanished. Instead, I got this cold, distant stare, like I was furniture he was planning to replace. Every time I tried to talk to him about us, about what was happening, he'd shut down or turn it around on me. You're being paranoid, Sarah. You're imagining things. Maybe if you weren't so needy, I wouldn't need space. That last one really got me. Needy? I'd spent our entire 5-year marriage being the supportive wife, putting his career first, hosting his boring work dinners, pretending to laugh at his boss's terrible jokes. And now I was needy for wanting my husband to actually acknowledge my existence. Something inside me snapped about 3 weeks ago. I was folding laundry in our bedroom. His laundry, by the way, because God forbid he learn how the washing machine works, when his, phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear. But the message preview was right there, big as day. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Same place. My heart dropped straight through the floor. I stood there, frozen, holding one of his stupid button-down shirts, staring at that message like it might change if I looked at it long enough. The contact name just said Jay with a heart emoji. Jay. Who the hell was Jay? I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because here's what I learned about myself that day. When you suspect your husband's cheating, you don't want to be wrong, but you also need to know you're right. You need proof. You need evidence. You need something concrete so that when he tries to gaslight you and make you feel crazy, you can slap the truth right in his lying face. So I did what any rational woman would do in 2024. I became a detective. And let me tell you, I was good at it. Scary good. I started paying attention to everything. Every time he picked up his phone, I noted the time. Every late meeting got written down. Every excuse, every explanation, every weird behavior. I logged it all in a note on my phone. I also did something I'm not particularly proud of, but desperate times call for desperate measures, right? One night, after Derek fell asleep, I took his phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type, but I knew his passcode. He'd never bothered to change it from our anniversary date, which was either incredibly stupid or incredibly arrogant. Probably both. What I found made me physically sick. Messages. Dozens of them. All to Jay. And they weren't just flirty, they were explicit, detailed. The kind of messages that made it crystal clear this wasn't some emotional affair or innocent friendship. This was full-on betrayal. This was a deliberate, ongoing deception. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. The messages were careful. Neither of them used real names. It was all baby this and sweetheart that. They had codes for everything. Meeting places were the usual spot. Plans were our thing. It was like they'd created this whole secret language specifically to avoid getting caught. I screenshotted everything. every single message. My hands were trembling, my heart was pounding so loud I was sure Derek would wake up, but I forced myself to be thorough. I needed all of it, every piece of evidence, because whatever was coming next, I wanted to be ready. The worst part about finding out, your husband's cheating isn't even the cheating itself. It's the performance you have to put on afterward. I had to wake up the next morning, make coffee, kiss him goodbye, and pretend like my entire world hadn't just shattered into a million pieces. I had to smile and nod when he told me about his day, knowing that half of what he said was probably lies. I had to sleep next to him at night, feeling his back against mine, and wonder if he was thinking about her. But I kept it together. I had to, because I needed more information. The messages told me they were seeing each other, but they didn't tell me who she was. And that's what I needed to know. Who was this woman? How long had this been going on? Where did they meet? How did it start? I started following him. Not every day, I'm not a psycho, but enough to establish a pattern. Derek's creature of habit, always has been. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he'd tell me he was working late or meeting with clients. But instead of going to the office, he'd drive to this little cafe on 5th Street, park his car, and walk 3 blocks to a wine bar called Vintage and Vine. Fancy place. The kind of spot with soft lighting, expensive bottles displayed behind the bar, and tables so intimate they might as well be confessional booths. The kind of place Derek had never, not once in our entire relationship, taken me. That stung more than I want to admit. I never went inside. I couldn't risk him seeing me, but I'd watch from across the street, sitting in my car like some character in a bad crime drama, waiting to catch a glimpse of this woman who'd stolen my husband. But the timing never worked out. He'd always arrive first, and by the time I'd park and position myself where I could see, he'd already be inside, and I couldn't see through the tinted windows who he was meeting. For 2 weeks, this was my routine. Work all day, pretend everything's fine at home, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, stake out a wine bar like I was. Working for the FBI. It was exhausting, emotionally and physically. I wasn't sleeping well. I'd lost weight. My best friend Monica kept asking if I was okay, and I'd just smile and say I was stressed about work. Because that's another thing about this kind of betrayal. It's isolating. You can't talk about it. Not yet. Not until you know everything. Because once you start telling people, it becomes real in a whole new way. It's no longer just your private nightmare. It becomes public knowledge. And there's no taking that back. Then last Tuesday, everything changed. I was scrolling through Derek's messages again. Yeah, I'd made a habit of checking them whenever I could, which probably wasn't healthy, but neither was being married to a cheater when I saw it. A new message from Jay. Tomorrow night, finally. I made us a reservation at Belmont's at 8. Can't believe we're doing this. It feels so official. Belmont's? I knew that place. It was this upscale French restaurant, downtown. The kind of place you go for anniversaries or marriage proposals. The kind of place with a waiting list 3 months long. Derek had promised to take me there for our 4th anniversary, but we'd never gone because he said it was too expensive and not worth the hype. And now he was taking her, his mistress, to the restaurant he'd deemed too expensive for his wife. The betrayal of it all hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about every lie, every excuse, every time he'd made me feel like I was asking for too much, or expecting too much, or being too much. This was about the systematic dismantling of my self-worth while he wined and dined someone else. That's when the idea hit me. A wild, completely unhinged idea that made my heart race and my palms sweat. What if I showed up? What if I reserved a table at Belmont's for the same night, the same time, and just happened to be there? I could finally see who this woman was. I could watch them together, catch them in the act with my own eyes, not just through screenshots and surveillance from across the street. Was it crazy? Absolutely. Was it something a rational, well-adjusted person would do? Probably not. Did I care? Not even a little bit. I called Belmont's that same afternoon. The hostess told me they were fully booked for the next 2 months, which wasn't surprising. But here's the thing about being a woman on the edge. You get creative. I told her it was my anniversary, that my husband had forgotten to make a reservation, and I wanted to surprise him, that it would mean the world to me. I may have cried a little. I may have laid it on thick. But it worked. Let me see what I can do, she said. And after a few minutes of typing and clicking, she came back on the line. Okay, I can squeeze you in at 8 o'clock, but it'll have to be table 14. It's right in the middle of the dining room next to table 15. Is that okay? Table 15. I didn't know which table Derek had reserved, but something told me that was it. Call it intuition. Call it the universe throwing me a bone. Call it whatever you want. I knew, deep in my bones, that I'd be sitting right next to them. That's perfect, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Thank you so much. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of barely controlled panic. Part of me wanted to back out, to cancel the reservation and pretend I'd never had this insane idea. But a bigger part of me, the part that was tired of being lied to, tired of being treated like I didn't matter, tired of living in this hellish state of knowing but not knowing, that part wouldn't let me quit. I planned everything meticulously. I told Derek I was having dinner with Monica, which wasn't unusual. I picked out an outfit that was nice enough for Belmont's, but not so fancy that he'd suspect anything if he happened to see me before I left. Black dress, simple jewelry, hair down. I looked good. Better than I'd looked in months, actually. Betrayal might be destroying me from the inside, but I'd be damned if I let it show on the outside. Derek barely looked up from his phone when I said goodbye. Have fun, he muttered, not even asking where Monica and I were going or when I'd be back. A year ago, that would have hurt. Now it just made me angry. He couldn't even be bothered to put on a show anymore. I arrived at Belmont's at 7:45, 15 minutes early. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The hostess greeted me with a warm smile and led me to table 14, right in the center of the dining room just like she'd promised. And sure enough, table 15 was literally right next to mine, separated by maybe 3 feet and a small decorative plant that did absolutely nothing to create privacy. I sat down, ordered a glass of wine I desperately needed, and waited. The restaurant was beautiful, exactly the kind of place you'd imagine when you think of an upscale French bistro. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, the gentle murmur of conversation mixed with classical music, playing just loud enough to create ambiance. Under different circumstances, I would have loved it here. At 7:58, Derek walked in. My heart stopped. Even knowing he'd be here, even having planned this whole thing, seeing him walk through that door made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. He looked good. Too good. He was wearing the suit I'd bought him for Christmas, the navy one that made his eyes pop. His hair was freshly cut. He was smiling, actually smiling, in a way I hadn't seen in months. He was 2 minutes early for his date with another woman, and he looked happier than he'd looked with me in forever. If I'd had any doubts about what I was doing, they vanished in that moment. The hostess led him to table 15. He sat down with his back to me, which was both a blessing and a curse. Blessing because he couldn't see my face. Curse because I couldn't see his, but I could hear him. I could hear him order a bottle of expensive champagne. I could hear him tell the waiter that he was celebrating something special. I could hear the excitement in his voice, the anticipation. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk over there and dump that expensive champagne over his head. But I stayed frozen in my seat, wine glass clutched in my hand like a lifeline, waiting for her to arrive. And then, at 8:03, she walked in. The hostess greeted her warmly, like she was a regular. The woman smiled, thanked her, and started walking toward table 15, toward Derek, toward the man who was supposed to be my husband, my partner, my person. I couldn't see her face yet, just her back. Dark hair, styled in loose waves, black dress, fitted, confident stride like she owned the place. She was tall, probably 5'8" or 5'9". Derek stood up when she approached, that ridiculous grin still plastered on his face. And then she turned, just slightly, just enough, and I saw her profile, and my entire world stopped spinning. No. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't possible. There had to be some mistake, some horrible cosmic mistake, because the woman walking toward my husband, the woman he'd been sneaking around with for months, the woman he was taking to fancy restaurants and sending explicit messages to, couldn't be who I thought it was. But it was. God help me, it was. Because the woman my husband was having an affair with, the woman who'd been helping him destroy our marriage and tear apart my life, was my little sister, Jessica, my baby sister, the girl I'd helped raise after our mom died, the girl I'd paid for to go to college, the girl who'd been my maid of honor at my wedding to Derek. That Jessica. J. It stood for Jessica. This whole time, the J in his phone wasn't some random woman. It was my sister, my own flesh and blood. I must have made a sound, because suddenly Jessica's eyes snapped to mine. For a split second, we just stared at each other across those 3 feet, that might as well have been a million miles. Her face went white, completely white, like she'd seen a ghost, which I guess she had. "Sarah?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but in that moment, with the way time had seemed to freeze, I heard it perfectly. "What are you doing here?" Derek's head whipped around so fast I'm surprised he didn't get whiplash. When he saw me, sitting there at the next table, dressed up and alone, every ounce of color drained from his face too. "Sarah, we were just what?" I said, and I was amazed at how calm my voice sounded, how steady. Inside, I was dying. Inside, I was screaming and crying and breaking into 1,000 pieces. But outside, I was ice. Just having dinner? Just celebrating something special? Just what, Derek? Jessica sank into her chair at table 15, and I noticed her hand was shaking. Good. She should be shaking. They both should be. "Sarah, please let me explain," she started, but I cut her off with a laugh, a sharp, bitter laugh that made several nearby diners glance our way. "Explain?" I repeated. "Oh, please, Jessica, by all means. Explain to me how you ended up sleeping with my husband. Explain to me how my little sister, the girl I practically raised, decided that betraying me was a reasonable life choice. I'm dying to hear this explanation." Derek reached for me, but I jerked away. "Don't you dare touch me," I hissed. "Don't you dare. You've been lying to my face for months. Months. Making me feel crazy, making me feel like I was imagining things, like I was the problem." My voice was getting louder now, but I didn't care. Let everyone in this fancy restaurant hear. Let them all know what kind of people they were sharing a meal with. "It's not what you think," Derek said, which might be the dumbest thing anyone has ever said in the history of cheating spouse cliches. "Sarah, please, let's talk about this at home. In private." "Oh, now you want privacy?" I shot back. "Now you want to talk? Because you sure as hell weren't interested in talking to me when you were sending my sister explicit messages about all the things you wanted to do to her. Were you?" Jessica's eyes went even wider, if that was possible. She looked at Derek, then back at me, and I saw the panic setting in. "You read his messages?" she whispered. "Sarah, those were private. Private." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Private? You're sleeping with my husband and you're worried about privacy? Do you hear yourself right now?" That's when it clicked. When I saw the look on her face, the way her eyes darted around the restaurant, the way her hands were literally shaking. She wasn't just scared that I'd found out. She was terrified that other people would find out. And suddenly, I remembered something I'd forgotten in the shock of it all. Jessica had gotten married 8 months ago to Tom. Sweet, trusting Tom, who worked as an architect and played softball on weekends and treated Jessica like she hung the moon. "Oh my God," I said slowly. "Tom doesn't know, does he? Your husband has no idea you're here right now, screwing around with mine." Jessica's face went from white to green. "Sarah, please," she begged, and actual tears were forming in her eyes now. "Please don't tell Tom. I'll end it. I swear. I'll stop seeing Derek. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't tell Tom. It'll destroy him." The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of asking me to keep her secret, to protect her marriage while she'd spent months helping destroy mine. Something in me snapped, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a cold, calculating way that scared even me a little. "You'll do whatever I want?" I repeated slowly. "Interesting, because what I want, Jessica, is for you to feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling right now. What I want is for everyone who loves you, everyone who trusts you, to know exactly what kind of person you really are." "Sarah, wait!" Derek tried to interject, but I ignored him completely. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about her, my sister, the person who was supposed to have my back no matter what, who was supposed to be on my side, who was supposed to love me. And she'd stabbed me in the back in the worst possible way. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling out my phone. "Tomorrow night, we're having a family dinner. All of us. You, me, Derek, Tom, Dad, Aunt Marie, everyone. And during that dinner, I'm going to show everyone in our family exactly what you've been up to. I have screenshots, Jessica, months worth of messages between you and my husband, every explicit detail, every secret meeting, every lie, and I'm going to make sure everyone sees them." "You can't do that," Jessica whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. She knew I could. She knew I would. "Sarah, please. I'm your sister, your baby sister. We We grew up together. I love you. You love me? I laughed again. That same bitter sound. You have a really twisted definition of love, Jess. Because last time I checked, people who love each other don't do this. They don't betray each other like this. Derek was staring at me like he didn't recognize me, which was rich considering I didn't recognize either of them anymore. Sarah, be reasonable, he said, which was absolutely the wrong thing to say. This doesn't have to get ugly. We can handle this like adults. Like adults? I stood up, gathering my purse and my dignity. You want to handle this like adults? Fine. Then like adults, you can both explain to everyone tomorrow night why our marriage is over and why Jessica's marriage probably should be too. Like adults, you can face the consequences of your actions instead of sneaking around like cowards. I paused, looking between them. My husband of 5 years and my sister of 28 years. 2 people I'd loved more than almost anyone in the world. 2 people I'd trusted completely. 2 people who joined forces to absolutely destroy me. Oh, and just so you know, this dinner you two were planning, this special celebration, I called Belmont's earlier. They told me someone had made a reservation for 8 o'clock under Derek's name and had ordered the engagement table set up. So what was this, Derek? Were you planning to propose to my sister? While you're still married to me? Derek's silence was all the answer I needed. Jessica's face crumpled, and she let out a sob. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It just happened. Save it, I said. Save all your excuses and apologies for tomorrow night. I'm sure everyone will be fascinated to hear them. I turned to walk away, but Jessica grabbed my arm. Sarah, wait. Please. If you do this, if you tell everyone, you'll ruin everything. Tom will leave me. Dad will never forgive me. You'll tear our whole family apart. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her face. I'll tear our family apart? I said quietly. Jessica, you did that all by yourself the second you decided to sleep with my husband. This? Tomorrow night? That's just making sure everyone knows the truth. She started to say something else, but I pulled my arm away and walked out of that restaurant with my head held high. The second I got to my car, though, the facade crumbled. I sat in the driver's seat and sobbed. Huge, ugly, gasping sobs that made my whole body shake. Because as much as I'd played it cool in there, as much as I'd channeled all my pain into cold fury, the truth was that I was devastated. Absolutely devastated. My husband had been cheating on me with my sister. That sentence alone was enough to break anyone. But it wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about everything it represented. It was about 5 years of marriage that had apparently meant nothing. It was about a sisterhood I'd thought was unbreakable. It was about trust that had been shattered so completely I didn't know if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. I drove home in a daze. Derek's car wasn't there, which was probably good because I genuinely didn't know what I'd do if I saw him right then. Part of me wanted to pack all his things and throw them in the yard. Part of me wanted to set them on fire. Part of me just wanted to curl up in bed and pretend none of this had ever happened. Instead, I sat at our kitchen table and started planning. If I was really going to do this, if I was really going to expose them in front of our entire family, I needed to do it right. I needed to make sure I had everything organized, every piece of evidence ready, every detail planned out. I spent the next hour organizing all the screenshots I'd taken from Derek's phone into a folder. I made sure they were in chronological order, that the dates and times were clearly visible, that there was no way anyone could claim they were fake or taken out of context. I had messages from 3 months ago, 2 months ago, last month, last week. I had proof of their ongoing affair laid out in black and white. Then I did something that felt a little crazy but also absolutely necessary. I created a group chat with my dad, my Aunt Marie, and Tom. Just a simple message: family dinner tomorrow night at my place, 7 p.m. Important announcement, please don't miss it. My dad responded first, everything. Okay, sweetheart? I almost broke down again reading that. Because no, Dad, everything wasn't okay. Everything was about as far from okay as it could possibly be. But I just responded, we'll talk tomorrow. Love you. Tom responded next. Sure thing. Jess and I will be there. Want us to bring anything? The fact that he had no idea what was coming, that he was so sweet and trusting and completely oblivious to the fact that his wife was cheating on him, made me feel sick. But he deserved to know. Just like I deserved to know. Just like everyone deserved to know what kind of people Jessica and Derek really were. Around midnight, I heard Derek's car pull into the driveway. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, a cold cup of tea in front of me, my phone in my hand. I heard him come in through the front door, heard him hesitate in the hallway. For a long moment, neither of us moved or spoke. Then he appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked terrible. His hair was a mess. His tie was loosened, and his eyes were red like he'd been crying. Good. He should cry. He should feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused me. "Sarah?" he started, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk." "No," I said simply. "We really don't. Not tonight. You can sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow night you can explain yourself to everyone. Until then, I don't want to hear a single word from you." "But," he tried again, taking a step toward me. I held up my hand to stop him. "Derek, I mean it. If you try to talk to me right now, if you try to explain or apologize or justify any of this, I will lose it completely. And trust me, you don't want to see that, so just go. Sleep in the guest room, or better yet, sleep in your car. I don't care. Just get away from me." He stood there for another moment, looking like he wanted to argue, but something in my face must have convinced him it wasn't worth it. He nodded once and disappeared down the hallway. I heard the guest room door close and finally let myself breathe. The next day was surreal. I called in sick to work, which I never do, and spent the entire day preparing for the dinner. I cleaned the house. I went grocery shopping. I cooked enough food for an army. I needed to keep busy. If I stopped moving, if I let myself think too much about what was about to happen, I'd fall apart. Derek tried to talk to me 3 separate times throughout the day. Each time, I shut him down. I had nothing to say to him. Not yet. Not until everyone was there to hear it. Around 5 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Jessica. I sent it to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail again. Then she started texting. "Sarah, please, we need to talk. I'm begging you, don't do this. Think about what this will do to Dad. You're making a mistake. Please, I'm your sister." That last one almost got me. Almost. Because yeah, she was my sister. But she'd forgotten that when she was sleeping with my husband. She'd forgotten that when she was helping him lie to me. She'd forgotten that when she was planning a future with him while I was at home, wondering what I'd done wrong, wondering why my marriage was falling apart. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Let her sweat. Let her panic. Let her spend the next 2 hours terrified about what was coming. She'd earned it. At 6:30, I put on a nice dress, did my makeup, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. Exhausted, actually. There were dark circles under my eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide, and I'd definitely lost weight. But there was also something else in my reflection. Something harder. Stronger. I'd spent the last few months feeling weak and confused and broken. But standing there, about to face down my husband and my sister in front of our entire family, I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt powerful. At 6:55, my dad arrived. He gave me a big hug and immediately started asking questions. "What's this about, honey? You sounded serious in your message." I just smiled and told him we'd talk when everyone arrived. He looked concerned but didn't push it. Aunt Marie showed up next, carrying a bottle of wine and complaining about traffic. Tom arrived at 7 on the dot, looking confused because Jessica wasn't with him. "She said she'd meet me here," he explained. "Something about stopping at the store. Has she shown up yet?" "Not yet," I said, exchanging a look with Derek, who'd been sitting silently in the corner like a condemned man waiting for execution. "But I'm sure she'll be here soon." And she was. At 7:08, Jessica's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as she sat there for a full minute, just staring at the house, working up the courage to come inside. When she finally did, her face was pale and her eyes were puffy. She'd been crying. She looked at me with this desperate, pleading expression, silently begging me not to do this. I just smiled. A cold, empty smile that probably scared her more than anything I could have said. "Hey, Jess," I said brightly. "Glad you could make it. We're all here now, so let's eat." Dinner was awkward, to put it mildly. Everyone could sense the tension, even if they didn't understand it. My dad kept shooting worried glances between me and Jessica. Tom kept asking if everything was okay. Aunt Marie, bless her, just drank her wine and complimented my cooking. Derek didn't eat. He just pushed food around his plate, looking like he might throw up at any moment. Jessica wasn't much better. She kept trying to catch my eye, trying to communicate something, but I ignored her. This was happening. There was no stopping it now. After dinner, when everyone was settling into the living room with coffee and dessert, I stood up. "So," I said, and my voice didn't shake even a little bit. "I'm sure you're all wondering why I called this family dinner. Well, I have an announcement to make. Actually, more like a revelation. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the TV. You see, I've recently discovered something very interesting. Something I think everyone here deserves to know. I pulled up the first screenshot. A message from Derek to Jessica from 3 months ago. Explicit and undeniable. The room went silent. Deathly silent. My dad's face went from confused to shocked to absolutely furious in about 3 seconds. Tom looked at the screen like he couldn't process what he was seeing. Aunt Marie gasped and covered her mouth. Sarah, what? My dad started, but I held up my hand. Let me finish, Dad. There's more. I scrolled through the messages one after another, letting everyone see the full scope of the betrayal. The planning, the sneaking around, the lies. Every dirty detail laid bare on that screen for everyone to see. By the time I was done, Jessica was openly crying, Tom looked like he'd been hit by a truck, and my dad looked ready to commit murder. So there you have it, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. My husband of 5 years and my sister of 28 years have been having an affair. Behind my back, behind Tom's back, behind all of our backs. I looked directly at Jessica. You wanted me to think about what this would do to Dad? Well, here we are. Let's see. My dad stood up slowly, his hands shaking. Jessica, he said, and his voice was so cold I barely recognized it. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this to your sister. Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it. Again. Daddy, I didn't mean, but she couldn't finish. She just dissolved into sobs, which was basically an admission of guilt. Tom was staring at Jessica like he'd never seen her before. How long? He asked quietly. How long has this been going on? Jessica couldn't answer. She just kept crying, her face buried in her hands. So I answered for her. Based on the messages, at least 6 months, probably longer. Tom stood up, walked over to Jessica, and just looked at her. For a long, horrible moment, nobody spoke. Then he said very quietly, I trusted you. I loved you. And you did this? He turned and walked out. Just like that. Didn't yell, didn't make a scene. Just walked out the door and left. Jessica tried to follow him, but my dad stopped her. You stay right here, young lady. We're not done. He turned to Derek. And you? Get out of my daughter's house. Now. Derek looked at me like he was waiting for me to protest or tell him to stay. I just stared back at him. You heard him, I said. Get out. He left without a word. And then it was just family. Me, Jessica, my dad, and Aunt Marie. My dad sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. How could you do this, Jessica? He asked. And he sounded so broken it made my heart ache. How could you hurt your sister like this? I didn't mean to, Jessica cried. It just happened, okay? We didn't plan it. We didn't want to hurt anyone. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen. Jessica, Aunt Marie said sharply. You made choices. Both of you made choices. A lot of them. For months. I sat there listening to Jessica try to explain the unexplainable, watching my dad try to process what his youngest daughter had done. And something strange happened. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt empty. Like all the emotion had been wrung out of me, and all that was left was this hollow acceptance of what my life had become. I think you should, leave, Jessica, I said finally. My voice was calm, almost detached. Go home. Figure out if you even have a marriage left to save. Because mine is over. You made sure of that. Sarah, please, she started, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Don't. Just don't. You've said enough. You've done enough. I need you to leave now. She looked at Dad like he might defend her, but he just shook his head. Go, Jessica. Your sister's right. You need to leave. The disappointment in his voice was crushing. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. After Jessica left, Dad hugged me for a long time. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I never imagined she could do something like this. I just nodded against his shoulder, too exhausted to cry anymore. The next few weeks were a blur. I filed for divorce, obviously. Derek tried to fight it at first, tried to convince me we could work through this, go to counseling, start fresh. I laughed in his face. There was no working through your spouse cheating on you with your sister. That wasn't a rough patch. That was a deal breaker of epic proportions. Jessica's marriage didn't survive either. Tom filed for divorce 2 weeks after the dinner. I heard through Dad that she'd tried to explain, tried to convince him it was a mistake, that she loved him, that it meant nothing. But Tom wasn't stupid. He'd seen the messages. He'd seen 6 months of deliberate deception and betrayal. He knew exactly what it meant. The family fallout was nuclear. Dad stopped speaking to Jessica entirely. Aunt Marie took my side, along with most of our extended family once word got out about what happened. Jessica became persona non grata at family gatherings, and honestly, I didn't feel bad about it. She'd made her choices. She could live with the consequences. Derek moved out a week after the dinner. I kept the house. My lawyer made sure of that. I also got a very favorable divorce settlement, considering the circumstances. Turns out judges don't look kindly on husbands who cheat with their wife's family members. Who knew? The hardest part wasn't the divorce or the logistics or even the gossip. The hardest part was rebuilding myself. Because that's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your sense of self. It makes you question everything. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? How did I miss the signs? But slowly, day by day, I started to heal. I started therapy, which helped more than I expected. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I took up yoga, started reading again, even adopted a dog. A golden retriever named Buddy who didn't care about my baggage and just loved me unconditionally. And you know what? I started to realize that maybe this wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it hurt like hell. But it also freed me from a marriage that was making me miserable, and from people who clearly didn't value me the way I deserved to be valued. 6 months after that dinner from hell, I ran into Tom at a coffee shop. We hadn't spoken since that night, and for a second, I considered just leaving. But he saw me and waved me over, and honestly, he looked better than I'd expected. Lighter somehow. "Sarah," he said, giving me a genuine smile. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I thought I would be," I admitted. "You?" "Same," he said. "Turns out being divorced is better than being married to someone who doesn't respect you." We both laughed at that, a real laugh, and ended up talking for over an hour. He told me he'd started dating someone new, a woman from his office who made him laugh and didn't have a secret phone full of lies. I told him about my therapy and my dog and my plans to go back to school. It was nice, really nice, to talk to someone who understood, who'd been through the same betrayal, who knew what it felt like to have your trust shattered by someone you loved. We exchanged numbers, promised to keep in touch, and actually meant it. As for Jessica and Derek, last I heard they weren't together. Turns out an affair is a lot less exciting when it's not secret anymore. When there's no sneaking around, no forbidden thrill, no betrayal to spice things up, they apparently realized they didn't actually like each other that much. Funny how that works. Jessica tried to reach out a few times. Texts, emails, even a letter once. All basically saying the same thing. She was sorry, she missed me, she wanted to fix things. But here's the thing about betrayal, especially from family. Some things can't be fixed. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Maybe one day, years from now, I'll be able to forgive her. But I'll never forget. And I'll certainly never trust her again. Derek's attempt at reconciliation was even more pathetic. He showed up at my house one night, drunk, crying, begging me to take him back. Said he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, that he loved me, that Jessica meant nothing. I told him that if Jessica meant nothing, that actually made it worse. He'd destroyed our marriage for nothing. Then I called him an Uber and closed the door in his face. My dad and I are closer now than we've ever been. He still struggles with what Jessica did. I can see it in his eyes sometimes. This confusion and pain about how his daughter could have turned out to be someone capable of such cruelty. But he's been my rock through all of this. Him. And Aunt Marie, both. The crazy thing is, looking back at that night at Belmont's, that moment when I saw Jessica's face and realized who Derek had been cheating with, that moment that felt like my world ending, was actually the beginning of something better. It was the moment I stopped being a victim and started taking control of my life. Was it the revenge I'd fantasized about? Sort of. I mean, I'd exposed them, destroyed their reputations, blown up their lives just like they'd blown up mine. But the real revenge, the best revenge, was living well. Was rebuilding myself into someone stronger. Someone who didn't need them. Someone who could look in the mirror and actually like the person staring back. Do I still have hard days? Absolutely. There are still moments when I see a couple holding hands and feel that pang of loss. Still nights when I lie in bed and remember what it felt like to be married, to have a partner, to believe in forever. But those moments are getting fewer and further between. And they're being replaced by better moments. Moments of peace, of joy, of genuine happiness that doesn't depend on anyone else. My therapist says I'm doing remarkably well considering everything I've been through. She says most people in my situation would still be stuck in the anger phase, or worse, trying to get back together with their cheating spouse because loneliness is scary, and familiar pain feels safer than unknown possibility. But I'm not most people. I refuse to be. I'm still processing everything, obviously. You don't just get over this kind of betrayal overnight, but I'm doing it. I'm healing. I'm moving forward. And honestly, that's the best revenge of all. Not the exposed affair, or the ruined reputations, or the destroyed relationships. The best revenge is showing them that they didn't break me. They hurt me, yeah. They changed me, absolutely. But they didn't break me. Last week I went to Belmont's again, alone this time. Not to torture myself, or relive that horrible night, but to reclaim it. To prove to myself that they didn't get to ruin everything. The hostess recognized me, probably remembered the drama from that night, but she was professional about it. She seated me at a nice table by the window, and I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu and a bottle of wine that cost more than my car payment. And you know what? It was perfect. The food was amazing. The wine was excellent. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. I sat there in that fancy restaurant where my husband had planned to propose to my sister, and I felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude that I'd found out when I did. Gratitude that I'd had the courage to expose them. Gratitude that I was free. Because that's what I am now. Free. Free from a marriage that was slowly killing my spirit. Free from a sister who saw me as competition instead of family. Free from the weight of other people's betrayals. And that freedom, it's worth more than any revenge I could have planned. So yeah, I discovered my husband was having dinner with his mistress and reserved a table right next to theirs. I exposed their affair in front of our entire family. I blew up both of our marriages and probably traumatized everyone at that family dinner. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because sometimes the only way out is through. And sometimes the only way to heal is to first tear everything apart and expose the rot underneath. They say living, well, is the best revenge. And they're right. But you know what's also pretty great? Making sure everyone knows exactly who wronged you and watching them face the consequences of their actions. That's not petty. That's justice. That's standing up for yourself when no one else will. That's refusing to be the silent victim who protects her abusers out of some misguided sense of loyalty or family obligation. I protected Jessica our whole lives. I looked out for her, supported her, loved her, unconditionally. And she repaid me by sleeping with my husband. She doesn't get my protection anymore. She doesn't get my silence. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with everyone knowing exactly what those choices were. As for Derek, he's someone else's problem now. Or maybe he's no one's problem, just a lonely guy who threw away a good thing for a cheap thrill and learned too late that actions have consequences. Either way, I don't care. He's not my concern anymore. He's not my anything anymore. He's just a lesson I learned the hard way. About trust, about love, about what I will and won't tolerate in my life. I'm 32 years old, divorced, estranged from my sister, and starting my life over from scratch. And somehow, impossibly, I'm okay. More than okay. I'm actually excited about what comes next, because for the first time in years, my life is truly mine. No one's lying to me, no one's using me, no one's taking me for granted. It's just me, figuring out who I am and what I want, without anyone else's betrayal hanging over my head. Is this the ending I wanted? Hell no. I wanted the fairy tale. I wanted the happy marriage and the loving family and the sister who had my back. But you know what? Sometimes the fairy tale is a lie. Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you worst. And sometimes, the only happy ending you get is the one where you walk away with your dignity intact and your head held high. And that's enough for me. More than enough. Because I survived. I stood up for myself. I refused to be quiet and complicit in my own betrayal. I made sure the truth came out, consequences be damned. And now I get to build a new life. A better life. A life where I'm surrounded by people who actually value me. So to anyone out there who's going through something similar, who's discovered betrayal and is wondering what to do next, here's my advice. Don't protect them. Don't keep their secrets. Don't sacrifice your peace for their comfort. Tell the truth. Expose the lies. Let everyone see who they really are. And then walk away and build something better. Because you deserve better. You deserve honesty and loyalty and respect. And if the people in your life can't give you that, then they don't deserve to be in your life at all. It's that simple. It's that hard. But it's that necessary. The golpe they pulled, the traición they committed, the venganza I took, it's all part of my story now. The story of how I discovered the worst thing imaginable and somehow came out stronger on the other side. The story of how I chose myself when no one else would. The story of how I survived. And I'm still writing that story, every single day. The next chapters are going to be better. I'm going to make damn sure of it. And that's my story. The story of the worst betrayal I could have imagined, and how I chose to handle it. Looking back, I don't regret exposing them. I don't regret that family dinner. I don't regret any of it. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to first make sure the truth is out there for everyone to see. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this whole crazy journey. I know it was a lot, but if you made it this far, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I went through. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same thing? Would you have exposed them publicly or handled it differently? Do you think I went too far or not far enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to know what you would have done. And hey, if you found this story as wild as I did living through it, go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Trust me, I've got more stories where this came from. Thanks again for being here. Until next time, remember, you deserve people in your life who actually value you. Don't settle for anything less.